Okay, hi, this is the digital experience team. We are just talking about boards, how they've been working to date. Really great conversation. We're specifically making this video for you, Becky, just so that you can get insight into what we're talking about, things that we think have worked, things that we think could go better, and some potential ideas, how to move them forward. While we're talking, I'll be sharing my screen. We've got a shared Google Doc. I'll send you that link as well. Based on everything we're seeing, just to kind of set the table a little bit, we think that because our project lives nested within the www repo, the main problem that we're all working around is we can't easily work MR first and allow all the awesome GitLab project management features to work the way they should. So it's creating a little bit of extra work. Like, we have to have an engineering issue and then an MR, and things get lost. So we're aware of that. We know that that's no one's fault for setting it up that way, and are hoping that in a near future state, when we eventually get to own the www repo and split it off from the handbook, we'll be able to see some big gains. But in the meantime, we just wanted to talk through what's been going on, some things that we think we can do better. So I'll share my screen. And this is just going to be sort of no real plan here. We're just going to go through this. So why don't we get going into what works? I see Javi, you're kicking it off.
Yeah. Something that works well for me personally is when I bookmark the boards to the browser, it helps me keep track of things. I realize that if I don't do that, I won't ever look at my own boards, or I'll just lose where they are. On a related note, something I like about the boards features is that when I'm working with labels, you can assign a board to have like a ton of labels out. And essentially when you create an issue from that view, it adds those labels automatically. So I don't have to like create an issue and then add all the labels. I don't know if that's something that we were supposed to know, but that's something that I really like because I forget all the time what labels to use in what context. So just having a system where I don't have to think about what labels to use is really beneficial. And I can explain that further, but I think we all get the point. I like the label that I created for the web design system, just because I personally, for myself, I wanted to keep track of all the things that we are doing across two different repos, which is inbound marketing and slippers, which is really nice. Yeah. Tyler?
Yeah, I, coming from being a developer on a marketing team elsewhere, the thing that works like I love having issues be like my primary, like Lawrence of the agency day work, these external requests. It's awesome as a developer, like actually getting an issue for a web page, things that I have in the past fielded as emails, Slacks, or drive-by conversations at a cubicle. So I think that like using boards for these external requests are great. And I think to some degree the kind of like Javi said with like the labels and the templates, I think those are useful for that, especially when it comes to managing information requirements, and especially just like the documentation and the handbook first async kind of stuff. So I love it for these external requests and the agency day work.
Yeah, I second everything Tyler said. Agency day work, it's great.
I'm just adding here. I think one thing that did work well is when they work and we're able to, it's the right kind of work that's coming in. It ensures we're only taking on an appropriate amount of work per week. It gives our teammates and our leaders an opportunity to look at our boards and say, hey, like, love that you love being here, love that you want to do a ton of stuff. You should only have 8 to 10 weight points this week, and I notice you have 16. Those numbers don't make sense. Like, let's critically assess what we should do and what we could put off. So I found that to be super effective. And of course, the caveat is like when it's the work that fits with the boards. So that's great. Yeah, I think there's a lot of positives. I'd also interject to say that, like, I know we, in a previous discussion, I know a lot of us just aren't looking at boards because there's a lot of things that can be improved. So why don't we jump into what doesn't work? Brandon, I see you're up first there. And if there's any comments on the side on stuff too, like feel free to jump in if you made the comment to, I think there's some really good conversation going there.
Yeah, sorry, I just kind of shoehorned this item in there. We were talking earlier and reviewing some of these, and I didn't mention this, but it popped into my head that some of the problems we've run into before is anyone can change anyone else's boards accidentally. So, you know, you drag an issue into a specific sprint, you say it's assigned to me, I'll be working on it. Someone else goes and changes it to a different milestone because they're, you know, whatever their deadlines are, like it doesn't coexist. So the fact that multiple people can work on an issue is great, but it also can be confusing. And it can also happen in not just milestones, it can be changed labels or whatever else. You could be like, anyway, so that's one issue, is that anyone can change anything for boards.
And yeah, the biggest thing that came up for me, still being somewhat new here, but like I didn't even know about this process, and it just was not, it's just onboarding, right? And I think that's external to us. I think that and I think because I think many teams manage all of these processes differently. I didn't, the handbook page on the process wasn't a part of my onboarding. I didn't like know how this was going on, and like I still am kind of unclear on the process because I feel like I've had to like, I'm like learning about it as I go, and and like I don't know, like, yeah, I don't know precisely where the right information is and like where to get it, because there are a ton of different workflows out there for different teams, and like searching the handbook can be challenging to get signal from noise. And
Yeah,
Javi?
yeah.
So if I could just add to that comment on the side, I didn't even know that boards existed, and I'm sure part of that is that it wasn't in the onboarding process. But when I did find out that they existed, like 4 months later, I'm not sure I also know what the benefit of it is, because I like looked at it and was like, oh, look, I have a board, cool, and then kind of forgot about it again. So there's like its existence, but also like what is the benefit of using it?
I'm the same as Jess on that one.
Yeah, I'm jumping in. I'm not sure what tags I'm allowed to use, despite there being page in the handbook. I wrote a comment on the side on what the word triage literally means. I'm looking at Jess's comment. It says the definition is to assign degrees of urgency. It's to figure out what works comes first, second, or third. Laura also added, it's unclear what that process looks like to us. So I just wanted to shout out those things. I have the next couple actually. I never fill out issues. That's something that I do. And I looked at my own issues and found that half of them are just the title itself and then nothing else within them. So thought that'd make that clear. And then I'm reading my last point here. I started to sync my boards up with inbound marketing. Oh, gotcha. The boards that I've created, no one else uses. And I don't think that's anyone else's fault, because I don't think it should be that anyone has to use the board. It's more so like do whatever the work that you have to do, and then the boards will automatically like figure out how that work gets reviewed and completed, etc. So I don't think it should be like someone is managing a board. It's more so like the board does its own thing, and it's like more so like a project management tool that you can see from like 10,000 feet up in the air what's happening.
Yeah, and I have the next couple points that are just kind of confusion around how dates work. Internal agency stuff gets assigned, and since there are usually a lot of kind of key players, they have all been given a date of, you know, February 5th as the due date. And so have I, but I need the content and the assets and the ebooks and the whatever before that date. So then I'm now like running around and chasing people. And sometimes the dates don't line up with one of our internal agency Friday work days. So that's been kind of tough to manage. So maybe there would be a solution where sprint board dates could kind of adjust based on which piece of the puzzle needs to be built at what time. I'm also fuzzy on milestones versus due dates. I try to make them be the same, but I see them diverge sometimes. And lastly, the sprint boards that I see myself in show Fridays, Friday after Friday after Friday, but like within those weeks, there's no real distinction between like, I'm working on this, I'm blocked on this, I'm a reviewer for someone else's code on this. So like having those swim lanes, we just don't have access to. So I don't know how much use we get out of boards that just show kind of what we're doing every Friday. Yeah.
There's a bunch of +1s on the milestone versus due date. Because like I'm also confused. I think something that gets very confusing on it for me is that they change. And I don't know when or why they change. Like sometimes it seems like it's the beginning of the week, sometimes it's the end of the week, other times it's other times. And I like, because I'm like thinking of the milestones as due dates, I like set my own cadence to like meet that milestone. And then when the milestone changes, if it's like the milestone was Friday and then on Thursday it changes to the next week, but I like front loaded it. And so on Wednesday and Thursday I was working on it. It just feels like I had the rug pulled out from underneath my feet. And I was like, oh, I was really moving fast towards this deadline, but now I have a whole, or this due date rather. And now I have a whole extra week to do it, which I wish I had known on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. So I think that's confusing to me.
Yeah, just kind of along that train of thought, and I know this isn't necessarily applicable to what we do here at GitLab, but Agile theory overall kind of says that a sprint is a locked down thing when you start it, and after that point, it shouldn't be able to be modified. So like that way, you know what you're producing that sprint, you know what you've been promised to deliver and what can be delivered and those kinds of things. I know that's an ideal world and not something that is necessarily achievable, but it's something that hasn't really appeared to be the case at GitLab. It's happens from time to time, but yeah, anyway, so food for thought there.
I'm wondering with the milestone versus due date, if somebody does have a good explanation of the difference, and because a couple of us also put that we read the handbook and still don't understand it, if there's some sort of to-do from either our team or from another team that could maybe be more clear on what it is, not just for our sake, but for the whole company's sake.
I just documented that. I'll just pick question, or I'll document questions and we can come back and action them afterwards.
Yeah. And yeah, I mentioned that date related one, number 7. So Tyler, you're up.
Okay, excellent. And I should also mention, it's cool that milestones move because I appreciate the flexibility. I think it's easy to think about like the things that are challenging about it, but like it is also very nice that like there seems to not be a ton of bad feelings when those dates change. I think that's really good. But back to other challenges. This is just like a hang up for me. I don't know, like I feel weird putting, not weird, like some of the issues that I'm working on seem very unrelated from all the other stuff that's in this board. And I feel weird putting it there. And very specifically for me, like if I'm working on something that is like middleman extensions that affect the whole www repo, it like feels weird going next to the agency day work, or things that are just things that I'm looking at, or maybe just Lauren and I are looking at. It doesn't like fit for me, like putting it in if I look at the URL, right? If I look at the breadcrumbs and I'm like, oh, I'm doing this like performance benchmarking on a middleman inside the like inbound marketing, growth marketing, digital experience team. Just like, I don't know, it doesn't quite click. And I just want it to be in the www about or GitLab com repo. Like I just want it at the top level because it's about that repository. So I think some of the existing boards and the internal issues, whereas the external requests for agency days like make a ton of sense and are super useful to me, I feel like I'm adding noise to a board about stuff that like the people really using that board don't care about and don't want to see.
I'd like to second that, and also bring note to stuff happening to the repo that isn't tracked on these boards that's really important, such as upgrading to Ruby 2.7. And there's tons of merge requests right now open for that, which is going to have huge impacts on everything. And it's not tracked on any of our boards, but it's high priority for GitLab.
Tina, I think you're up.
Yeah, I'm next. I think everything that I've jotted down here has already been reflected. I'll just go over it anyways. I don't really know how to use my boards. Whenever I go there, they're either empty, irrelevant, overwhelming. I don't really know how to manage them and what the benefit is of managing them for my personal workflow. Often things are just being moved around, so I just rely on issues and to-dos to do my work. That's really all I had. Javi.
Just really quickly, I don't know where to put my backlog for things. I think I've heard that people have been doing this kind of on an individual level, and I think that makes sense. I have kind of not been doing that, and so it's just like the ones that happen in my head are just like, I better hope I remember to add them. Lauren mentioned one that I thought was really helpful, that could be helpful for me, is to add them on the one-on-one docs. And then for my next point, do you ever check about GitLab issues MRs? I don't even know if that's something that we do. Is that something that we should be doing? No clarity on that, in my opinion. Is that like an explicit responsibility of ours? Should we even do that? Yeah, I think that comes with like that conversation of having two separate places for things. And it feels like, yeah, I see Lauren's probably trying to chime in. So
Yeah, this leads nicely into mine. GitLab works best when merge requests are created from issues within the project repository that work's getting done. And we're missing out on valuable features by creating and managing our issues for www or slippers outside of that project. And I lose time because I have to apply all those labels to my merge requests, when if it was just created in the same project, the labels are automatically applied and the branch name is, and everything has a standard. And then the third is my sprint boards personally have been consistently overloaded the past quarter with 20+ wait points per week. So I stopped looking at it and I worked on the issues that I thought needed to get done.
Yeah, mine was just about I've we've gotten a few issues where there's just a lot of the boilerplate is left in from the issue templates, which, like, I love a good issue template and I tried to use them. I think they're super helpful. But I think something just like an education piece for people using them is like, fill out the prompts, but like delete all the stuff that you don't fill out. Like, I think that like giving people the permission, like you can just delete it. Like, it's cool. Like if it's irrelevant, because it's super hard to parse out the useful information and like what is relevant information versus what is just stuff left over from the templates. I think someone suggested simpler templates somewhere, and I think that's useful too. I like writing and I like the documentation. I like the long-winded template stuff. I just want clearer information versus boilerplate.
This leads into the 16, the agency day templates. Sometimes they have missing resources. For example, they have a link to the Figma files that I'll be building this page out because of that Figma file, and I'll click on it and there's nothing there. So I then therefore think the design is not ready, when in fact it is. It's just completed in a separate issue.
Yeah, I've noticed that too. I think it's like something in the template. It's just set up to like easily be a link, but it's actually easier to know if it's not a link. And then if it is a link, it is a link. Awesome, that was amazing. So thanks everyone for putting such good thought into what doesn't work. I'm seeing a lot of themes. We'll synthesize this as we go forward. But I thought it would also be good, we've got a little bit more time here, so we can cruise through this. There's only 8 items with some sub items about like hearing from the team and the people that are using this, like what would make it better for you. And I added the little caveat and I forgot a closing. There we go. Like with as little change as possible. So not trying to like reinvent the wheel here, but what can we do? So Laura, I see you're first.
Yeah, I know that there's been a bit of talk about sharing a board during sprint planning when we have sprint planning meetings anyway, and we do a Google Doc like this. It would just be great to have a board that has maybe just our team, because there is a board that I linked there that is like, it looks like all of marketing. There's so many people, it's really chaotic to just know what we're doing and what's kind of relevant for us. So maybe that's a label or something just to be able to see like really quick, oh, like, you know, Tyler's got all this stuff in progress. One of it is related to a thing I'm doing. Can Tyler help me with that thing? Or is he too busy? Like just kind of seeing what other people are up to before I go like bothering them and pinging them. And that kind of helps if someone externally asks for work that needs to be done like today. We have a link to see like how busy people are or how available people are to do that kind of work. So maybe that's just a label. But yeah, Tyler?
Yeah, similar, to kind of same idea. Just think about as little change as possible. I think that our sprint iteration has made huge strides in terms of like the sprint workflow overall. This has been like night and day. This last sprint cycle has been awesome. And I think that something that's working well, like the Google Doc agenda is great. And I wonder if we can do some of the stuff we do in that agenda in a board, whichever board, whatever the right board is. Perhaps it's Laura's suggestion of the board, but we wouldn't add any other. It would be the same thing we have been doing in the agenda. And I know, like thinking about like I'm going to be out on Monday, and I was going to write a note in the sprint agenda of like, hey, assign me whatever. I don't even know what that might be, because there's like not a place that I can go to say like what is the backlog, right? If I'm thinking about like Kanban, Scrum, like I don't know what someone might give me for next sprint. I'm happy to field whatever and take whatever. I have the whole sprint open. I don't have any like big thing I'm worried about, but like, yeah, if we had like digital experience board and I could say like, oh, hey, I see these issues. Like these would be good ones for me. I'm happy to take whatever. That would be super useful.
I'm up next. Something that I wanted to get into the better habit of is, I think a lot of the like limitations of boards and similar type things could be communicated upward more consistently. I just want to make sure that we're not being an echo chamber and that we're actually passing this feedback along to people that can actually help directly make it better. I did an example for like a little thing where it's like when you're doing formatting within Markdown within an issue, hitting Control Z doesn't undo the formatting when you click on the UI for it. And so then I made an issue for that. And so then, and it's getting picked up at some point. And like, you can see that like all the tags and people who have seen it, which is awesome. I think doing that more often makes it so that we can actually make the product better than just like complaining about it and never doing anything about it. On a different note, I suggest that we look at issue templates that we have existing and try to find ones that work better for us in particular. In my like internal stuff, a lot of it is just simply like, why am I doing something? How am I doing it? What am I doing? And it's just like simple, straight to the point. And it's not something that feels like is getting in the way of me doing work. I think there's also like the mental hurdle of like, if I open an issue template for something and I see a big blob of something that I have to fill out, I'm just going to leave it like that and be like, I'll get to this later. And then I never do because I'm too busy doing actual work. I also added the sub point of making less issues over bigger tasks, so it doesn't feel like all of this is being bogged down by the UI. So that it's like, instead of creating like 3 issues for related tasks, just have one and have it be a thread where people just keep talking about it. I think that would also help us. And I also just wanted to talk about the effectiveness of the changes on a sprint by sprint basis. I think we also talked about that, like when in the middle of a sprint something will get changed. So just helping that all of that gets like sorted out and making sure that things get locked in as we work on stuff. Oh wow, I realized I had a lot more in here. Get into the habit of updating pages to the handbook. I think Tyler brought up this excellent point about making sure that things get written in like instead of an issue format, having an MR format where the deliverable at the end of that is a contribution to the handbook. I think that's really, really interesting. And I think that there's an opportunity there for us to improve our own documentation. I saw point 6. I saw that Tina did a time track of her estimated task, and I think starting to communicate these upward can be helpful so that other people can see what we can reasonably get done. I see that Jess wrote something, and I'm just reading it really quickly. Yeah, anyway, I'm just going to keep going just because. Yeah. Number 7. I think we can also just in general be more assertive with our agency style issues. I think a lot of us like to think of us as like what's that analogy we use? Like when we're button pressing like people robots. And I want to make sure that we're being like using our expertise more critically than just like, this is the issue that was given, so let me deliver on it. Let me ask questions and make them like think about their own assumptions in the claim that they're making and try to see if there's a better solution or an easier solution, or ideally both. I wrote some sub points about whether we're like asked to question if an agency task is even like a right idea. Being transparent about timelines and how long things take. As an MVC, it could be as simple as when you get an agency task, just check in with the person who's the stakeholder for that right away instead of waiting on it. That's something that I just did today for the first time, and I thought that could be helpful. I also just wrote like Scrum Master ? I don't know if that discussion has ever gotten across. I don't know if that should be an explicit responsibility within our team during sprint planning, that we can just during that time devote 20 minutes to all of us like interim do that ourselves. It seems very unlikely that we'll get that dedicated person. So I just think that that's the reality of what is our work is going to look like, is to just dedicate that time up front to do it. Once the sprint is locked in, we just let the system play out and we'll see what happens.
Awesome. Thanks everyone. We're 1 minute to time here. So Becky, if you've made it to the end of this discussion, the doc I will link you to has the discussion points that we documented before we hit record. So yeah, I look forward to making this even more effective. I'll stop sharing and stop recording.